Animal Love Languages Let's Talk to Animals podcast. My name is Shannon. I'm an animal sensitive and intuitive and a Reiki practitioner. And this is Pearl Cuts. We are capturing this podcast and vlogcast right around his daily nap time. So he is trying very hard, as you can see, to those of you who are watching the vlogcast anyway, to get down to my knee. I'm going to let him go and take a nice restful nap. Doesn't that sound wonderful? And here on the podcast and on the vlogcast, we're talking about all things animal communication, and especially taking the perspective of, let's come into this with a beginner's mind. Let's, tackle the big woo in the room, so to speak. Is it a real deal? Is it something everybody can do? How do you do it? How do you know you're doing it? How do you get started? Is this something you have to be born with? If you didn't come to it early in life, can you still come into a real experience of animal communication? What does it look like working with different species? And actually today I'm really excited. I've got Suze Kenington from New Zealand, and we're connecting today. Her website is animalsinyourheart.com. I just want to make sure I point that out at the beginning. And Suze has worked with all kinds of different species, but has a special affinity, I would say, and definitely a very special attraction to and from, I would say, horses, so equines. And so we are going to get a chance to hear how she got started, a little bit what her journeys look like, what her path has looked like thus far, and also, if time permits, maybe a little bit about how it can feel unique and look unique to work with horses. So I'm really excited to learn today with all of you. And just want to encourage you, if you're new to our podcast or our vlogcast on YouTube, don't get overwhelmed. Of course, there's lots of information, but just understand that there's a very good chance the animals have led you here. And that's why you're listening to Let's Talk to Animals instead of, burn fat in 50 minutes or how to work a 4-day week or, whatever it is, because we have lots of options. There is no shortage of podcast options. So welcome. Excited to have you. And so, Suze, we're just going to start off by let's kind of rewind back to the beginning. And, what was it like for you when you started waking up to your abilities, and how did that journey unfold for you?
Well, I'd say I kind of think of it as BC and then AD. So before consciously doing it, and then obviously when you are choosing to do it and dialing in. The beautiful thing that I've felt now, and it's the most encouraging thing to everybody who is starting out, is the information is always there. It's not like it's been created just for you in the moment in which you're looking for it. It's like a radio station, LIFE, radio station life. It's always playing. So that gives me a lot of good comfort knowing that it's not elusive. It is a continuous movement of information in the form of different types of energy in the universe all the time. So it's like, yay, there's nothing here that is needing to be created for you to be able to do it. So when I got started, I guess for me it was dreams. I remember I was at university and I woke up and I was so upset because one of our horses, I got a very clear vision of him down a muddy slope, stuck under a tree. And he was in a really, really bad way. And as soon as I got up that morning, I rang Mum and said, look, Pete's in trouble. Do you know where he is? And she went, how do you know that? Because we found him upside down. And so for me, I guess it was that, where my conscious mind started knowing things. But I was a lucky kid. I grew up on a farm surrounded by animals. So we had constant stream of dogs and pet lambs and horses everywhere, and there were cattle and sheep and native birds. And so I've been around animals. In fact, just quietly, I kind of prefer the company of animals. Before I started this process, I'd like to say that animal communication has actually given me a lot more tolerance and love and acceptance and compassion for the human experience as well. So just
wow.
And then when I started coming into meditation in my 30s, just really for curious sake, I got to an age where I was like, well, I've kind of ticked my list. I've got the home, the husband, the children, the everything. Where's my bliss? So I guess I was kind of online to start questioning what are the bigger things in life, and the more materiality and travel focused life that I'd had before just wasn't nourishing. So I guess the animals were the ones that were tapping you on the shoulder and saying, we can help you find out about that more. And I'm really, really grateful they did, because what I have been privy to, I just feel incredibly grateful and privileged as well. It's beautiful, incredibly beautiful. And the way our animals see us has helped me see people in a more expanded state as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering, were you born with it? Did you wake up and begin speaking and always know? No, not consciously. And I do believe, I don't know French, but if I was to learn it, I would have to practice, and I would have to spend time immersing in the nuances and the individual way in which my mouth will create the sounds. And it's the same with our intuition. We have to learn our own intuitive languages because they are personal. There's themes, but they are personal. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said so much in there that I have this feeling that as people listen or watch, their ears are going to be perking up along the way. Like, are you one of those people who tends to prefer the company of animals to people? That's one of it's like, we sometimes think that, and of course, I've always been surrounded by animals as well. And, that there's that unconditional love makes them really easy to be with, makes them pretty easy to love, and they're really cute. And it's like, okay, but in order to work with animals, in order to help animals, we also have to learn to work with ourselves, and we have to learn to work with our own species, because chances are good that animal that needs assistance, that needs, a little communication intermediary or translator, if you will, is attached to a human. And that human is probably, if they're coming to us, we do get the occasional enlightened pet parent or animal keeper who is just like, they seem really happy. I just want to find out, is there anything else I can do? But the vast majority of time when somebody is wanting to connect with somebody like you or me, wanting to connect in with their animal, there's probably something that feels amiss, or maybe even as seriously wrong, or there's maybe even a transition in progress. And so that person is in a little bit or a lot of stress. And so it's like we're having to kind of recalibrate on every level. I often liken my first experiences with interspecies communication is like, scrolling through my applications in my, operating system, if you will, and finding this program that says interspecies language and being like, ooh, what's that? I think I'll click on it because, right, why not? And it unfolded, and I was like, wow, I didn't know that this was in here. And the truth is, when I look back over my 50 or so, 5 decades of life on this planet, I guess, and I see, I didn't have any training. Nobody really talked to me about that, and sometimes I was even more than sometimes viewed as a little odd for being, a little fae or mystic or wanting to be off in the trees when everybody else was at the party and I'm in the back talking to the dog. And, and it's like, that is,
yep.
So it's like, maybe I came into this world a little bit more aware that there was something else that I wasn't accessing that could make me feel more alive and more human. But I love what Dr. Temple Grandin says. She says animals, in fact, it was the title of one of her books. I feel like she won the book title lottery. When she called it Animals Make Us Human. And it's like, because we are animals, and there was something in me, and I feel that so much when I talk with different communicators and practitioners and mentors and teachers. And it's like, everything matters more. Everything feels richer and more alive once we discover this program and unpack it and install it and start running it. But I love what you said. It's like it doesn't matter what language we're learning. we have to practice. And the truth is, most of us didn't get any introduction to interspecies communication. So the animal is way ahead of us here. So let's talk about that a little bit. You know, where do we go? Like, where did you go when you started kind of trying to, you know, wrap your mind and your faculties and around this interspecies communication, this awakening you were having, and you know, start to kind of quantify it and trust it so that it could, you know, you could tap into it if somebody needed you and be there for them.
Yeah. And I really love that you mentioned mind, because our mind is a processing unit and a narrator of so many things. Sometimes I think about it like I have an inbox and there's a whole lot of spam coming in there, some noise from day-to-day life. And I have to have a good spam filter to make sure that that doesn't fill my awareness when I'm communicating. And to be honest, I find communication so it's relaxing because I don't have to know anything. I just have to listen. And my poor old mind is trying to work out things all the time, and logic and reason and getting things right. Whereas when I'm communicating, the most delicious skill that I have to work on is having a clean slate, knowing nothing, coming in with an infinite possibility. And my mind just goes, but you and I know that I'm going to get that chatter. So I turn around and say, yeah, that's great, but this isn't actually your job. Conscious mind, logic and reason, prefrontal cortex, you're not involved in this. So you can just chill out over here and we'll use a different part of this antennae-like body that we have. And yes, managing your conscious and your unconscious and your nervous system to be able to do this, that's really important, because your intuition really only shines through when you're in a parasympathetic nervous system state. If you're in fight, flight, freeze, your faculties, for want of a better term, including your mind, is focused on survival. But when we're in a survival state, we're not that receptive. We have to be in a safe place, which is why I do my communications remotely, because I find it a lot easier to reach that mode of operation in a space that I can curate, that I can manage. And our mind, our beautiful, beautiful mind.
Oh my goodness.
Is both a wonderful, it's a hinder and a help. So we need to manage our mind in that way. And I feel like communication is diving into the current of life. And then so much is possible. The magic and the mystery of the world reveals itself, but also death is beautiful as well. And the transition time and being there with an animal, it's been really educational for me to see how animals' attitude towards moving out of their bodies is very different to the human narrative around that. And that's brought me to a very different place the way I see it. Yeah. Yes, beautiful minds.
I mean, it's interesting because, you know, there's the human animal way, which is to kind of run everything through our prefrontal cortex and, you know, the gizmos and the gadgets up there. And the animal's way, at least from everything I've experienced thus far with interspecies communication, is to run everything through their sensory body. And so it's not that there's no mentalizing going on in a non-human animal and you know, no sensory experience in a human animal, but it's again one of tuning the radio antenna, if you will. And, you know, since the animal isn't likely to do that, we're the ones that have to adjust. And that, you know, as you said, that takes, you know, it takes practice. We have to do it. And so, you know, some people go through a formal education process. Some do a lot of what, you know, in the educational field, we might call case studies. We're just talking to a lot of animals, talking to their people, verifying information, just starting to trust that there is a two-way conversation going on, even though it doesn't feel or look like exactly what happens when we converse with another human. And so it's almost like there's two conversations going on. And I love what you just said about working remotely and creating a safe space to talk to the animal. Okay, I am going, like, my screen, I forgot about this. My screen's going crazy. I've got a little halo around me for those of you who watch the YouTube version. It was getting pretty and a little psychedelic. So but just add some black light and neon and we'll be all set. So, so there's really two conversations going on. And, the one is the intuitive conversation with the animal, and the other is this conversation that we need to have with their person to wrap that person back into the conversation. And so, I'm curious about what you did as far as like starting to really trust, really, because it's one thing when you're talking with a friend or you're practicing. It's another thing when you decide, either I want to volunteer my services, I want to help make good matches at the local rescue shelter, I want to help facilitate, be a death doula for pets or pet hospice or something where, or, hang out a shingle, as I like to say, and, create a presence and build a practice professionally. And so it's like, there has to be self-management, there has to be people skills. And then there's the intuitive base. So kind of what did that look like for you moving into the space where you are now, where you have clients all over the world,
Yeah, for me, it started with going with a friend to a woo-woo festival and seeing a gridded list of all the different things that are on offer. And as the universe does, one of them almost leapt out and hit me in the face. And it was co-creating healing with animals. So I went along, I had to go to that one. All the rest of them, they were interesting and I learned some really good stuff, but that one I had to go to. And we were guided through a connection with an animal and to surround them in unconditional love. And I lost it. I was just, ugly crying. And the tutor came along and said, that seems to have really touched you. No kidding. And sometimes it can be very intense when you step into the space of unconditional love. If you would like to pursue this, here's a card and you can come along and practice these skills. And she was a theta healer. So that was the route that I went down to learn. And I had to, very frustrated at the time, I had to learn on people first. We have basic and advanced theta healing. And yes, I was working with people. So I was getting a lot of feedback, very direct feedback from the first set of learning that I had from other humans. And then we were moving through into animals. And it was a beautiful introduction for me because I had a whole lot of belief systems I need to let go of. And it was great. That was really, really useful on that front. But also it was what I found a very respectful approach, because the energy of an animal, it's a refined thing, a refined state. And having come through with the human side of it first, you're already in a vibration that's a bit different than you were in the beginning. So you're not kind of leaping in, dealing with an energy that needs a respect and subtlety that you may not have had time to develop initially. So yes, that was my route, is going down the human healing route. And we did a lot of intuitive stuff, future readings and soul contracts, and also, I'm going like this as if it's casual, but it was a very broad introduction to energy. I would just say broad introduction to energy. Yeah, subtle energies. That's the unseen side of things.
Well, again, it's so funny because I just rewatched one of my favorite movies, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and she's Greek and he's not Greek. And she's like, well, I just, you're wonderful and I'm having a great time, but I just don't see how this is going to work. Nobody in my family has ever dated anyone that's not Greek. And he stops her and he's like, wait a minute. Like, what's not going to work? Like, we're not different species. And it's like, we kind of are, like, even working with humans, there are, all kinds of different personality types. There are different archetypes. There are, different life experiences. I happen to be a fan of the Enneagram, and I'm a 4, which means, we feel everything. And it's like, and some people are more in their heads. And it's like that on a subtler level, it can be true for animals too. It's like how each animal processes things can look slightly different. I was reading a book the other day and she talks about it's about an energy healing for animals book, and she talks about the species archetype or the species blueprint, so to speak, and like what it would look like for avians versus reptiles versus feline or canine, or in the case of your specialty, an equine. And I would love to hear a little bit more about what it's like specifically working with horses, because as I was sharing with you right before we pushed record here, I've had several people tell me that they feel like communicating with a horse will go or does go deeper than their connections with other species. Personally, obviously I attract a lot of parrots and turtles and cats and dogs, and haven't had as much opportunity to work with horses and with equines and with that whole sector. And so I would love to hear your experiences working with horses, and what do you think about that? What has your experience been?
The horse world, gosh, it's such a broad thing. And I tend to think of it as levels. There's sort of the day-to-day admin stuff about, do you want your cover on? What sort of feed do you enjoy? Who are your paddock mates? So there's social and nutritional side of it. But one thing that I seem to get a lot of is what I would call relational and purpose work. Why is this animal in my life? What is this horse here to teach me? And horses are in quite I would say, a unique position in their relationship with humans. I also speak to a lot of dogs, but we don't use dogs, and the word use, yes, I am using it.
I hear you.
We don't use dogs in the same way we use horses. And the domestication that's required to create a situation where a horse can be ridden is quite often a very long process of humanizing their ability to be in connection with humans. And they also have a history of being sports equipment and being farm equipment. So with that, for some horses comes, for example, I was talking to a horse in Dubai yesterday, and she was very clear that she had no choice in her life. She was born to be a show jumper, bred to be a show jumper, shipped halfway across the world from the UK. She got injured. She had a very, very loving carer, which was fantastic, beautiful, beautiful woman. But she knew that this weight of expectation on her body was having a huge impact. And the purpose side of it is where it gets really deep. I've seen horses step forward and want me to tell owners, and owners is, I don't like the word, guardians, partners, whatever, but we are responsible for their well-being, that they're there to support them through grief. For example, I'm doing a communication and a picture of a swaddled baby moves through really quickly through the image. And I said to the woman, this is left field, but I need to share. Part of my contract, I guess, as a communicator is to share everything, because it may not have relevance to me, but it may be something that's absolutely life-changing to the person who's receiving that information. Because I'm just an intermediary. The information was never for me, even though it informs my way of being in the world. I was not the destination. It's the person who was asking the questions. So I mentioned this baby, and she just absolutely floods of tears. She said, I lost a baby and I've been mired in grief and I haven't been able to rebuild my life. And the horse was saying, I know this, I'm here for you, and I see you. And I guess that's what I often see with horses is, I see you and I want to help you see me, because in that seeing each other is this incredible synergy to change the way we see everything. And what I would call kind of behind the admin of life, that connectivity. And it's not by chance that certain animals end up in certain people's lives. And yeah, to me, that sometimes freaks people out, because it's a level that they may not have imagined that their horse can go to. But that intimacy and that having someone really know you, that changes how you appear in the world as well. And I do think that horses are stepping forward saying, hey, it can be different. And I see you. And I want to, I guess in a way, it heals the relationship people have with themselves, because I've never had any animal have any grudge, any nastiness or belittling towards any human. And that space, knowing that you're then going and spending time with a being that embodies that, oh my word, what a gift. What an incredible gift. So people really do, they can have quite seismic shifts in the way they feel the world for them. And that ripples out into their community. Your relationship with self changes your relationship with other, changes your relationship with the universe. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love one of my favorite movies is Avatar. Boy, listening to me, you'd think all I do is sit around and watch Netflix all day. But I love how in the tribal tradition, she's trying to teach him, I see you, I see you. It means I am here with you in this moment. I'm not somewhere else. I am here. And, we have something here in Houston that I know they have in a lot of cities and all around the world called Death Cafe. And it sounds like a little morbid, like, I'm like, hey, I'm going to go to the Death Cafe. And it's like, it's just a place where, people, it's not a support group. It's not a, death planning 101, will making. It's just a place for people who are sensitive and aware and want to be able to utter the word death without everybody going, I think I see someone I know over there. And, just like, it's like, and there was a gentleman, it was an interesting group. We haven't been meeting for a while because of COVID. And there was a veterinarian there. There were several healthcare workers, people in the insurance industry, lots of different walks of life. The gentleman sitting beside me had a lot of loss in his life. And by far the most painful loss, and the one that he talked about the most, was the loss of his dog. And he seemed surprised himself at the depth of his grief. And, luckily, those of you who are listening don't see me doing air quotes with my fingers, but, he ended up in a cafe, in a meeting group where there was a veterinarian, an animal communicator, myself. And so, just having that validation and not having people looking at him just going, but it was just an animal. It was just a pet. It was just a dog. There's never just a should never be in front of any reference to any sentient being, anything at all. Like nobody is just a, and that, unconditional love, man, that's the best drug. You don't want to, nobody wants to give that up. And yet it can be incredibly difficult gift to accept. And that's what I really hear in your story, is this woman just being like, oh my gosh, I'm really not alone in my grief. She's grieving over her lost child, but here's this other being that's fully present, fully conscious, who sees her, who is fully capable of holding space for her and is willing and able and is showing up. And it's like, you gotta be a pretty strong human to say yes and hold that kind of gift. And I feel like, animals, they're not just here for people. That was kind of where I started and where my training started. And, it never really felt right. And the more I have the opportunity to connect all across species divides, I feel like, we all are here for all kinds of reasons. And yet there is so much opportunity to do, to add value. What the Dalai Lama says, be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. That's a pretty big challenge. And our animals tend to do a much better job of it.
And they're generous in their teachings for helping us get to there as well. I always have fairy lights on in my office when I'm communicating, because to me that is a beautiful visual of little glowing spots of consciousness that are all connected with each other. And that's how I see the world now. If I close my eyes, I can almost see the globe as just this glowing ball of consciousness of all these little individuals, but we're all connected. And Yeah, life feels different from that place.
It really does. It really does. And I hope, those of you who are listening or watching, maybe you're new to animal communication, maybe you're new to, the idea that you might want to start exploring this part of yourself. I know I've never felt more human than when I started realizing that my conversations with my own companion animals were not one-sided. You don't have to have a reason to investigate this program in your operating system. You can say, okay, bucket list, that's good enough. It's like, or just, I sometimes feel like, and because this was my own introduction to animal communication, the best way to experience animal communication quickly and profoundly is to actually ask someone like Suze or myself to facilitate a session for you and your animal. I did that a lot before I realized I was being called into a deeper connection with this aspect of me. There's also all kinds of resources if you're ready to kind of step in a little further. There are courses, there are workshops. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. There's going to be that part of your brain, especially if you're coming from more of a business or more of a left brain rational background, it's going to say, but there are so many animal communicators out there already. No. It's like, okay, but then let's look at how many animals there are out there. I mean, just millions.
And I do believe in the lock and key. There's a lock and key relationship going on. Not every key unlocks every lock. And you may be the one who can hear, because I do think communicators pick up different things. You may be the one that can hear that absolutely life-changing piece of information for somebody that no one else could.
Absolutely. We all have different special connections and pathways based on our past experience and our passions and our backgrounds. And so not knowing where the journey leads, but knowing it includes lots of cute animals can be a pretty darn good way to go. So on that note, Suze, tell us how people can connect with you, how people can work with you. I know you've had workshops in the past. Are you developing anything special right now? Is there, do you do one-on-one mentoring, or you obviously do sessions for all species around the world? So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, you made a really good point before that when you book a session with a communicator, one of the phrases I hear most often is, I thought that. So that's beautiful validation for your receptivity, hearing things, and therefore you're getting somebody just to back up and go, yep, you're on the right track, you were onto it. So therefore that's a lovely way of starting your communication journey, to go get the thumbs up from your animal. Yes, I do one-on-one mentoring, absolutely personalized, and I love doing that because everyone has their own hindrances and proclivities that they, things that some people are really good at certain things, and to be given immediate feedback is really helpful. It's very direct. I have a course coming out in March that I'm adapting, a course that I would do face-to-face, and going to do that online for March. And what other thing I would invite you to do is join the mailing list, because you do need to find out if somebody is the right teacher for you. Learning has to be in a supportive and really nurturing environment, and not everyone fits. So listening to the way someone speaks, listening to the phrases that use, you can see the way I talk. I'm kind of what I would call earthy woo. I don't talk about the cosmos so much. I'm a girl who's barefoot in the garden growing tomatoes, and that informs the way I relate to the world. And I may not be for you, but you may be needing to find that out by listening to a few things that I've done or seeing, because I do believe that the teacher-student relationship, it's a sacred bond. Stepping forward and supporting somebody to expand their consciousness, you don't get much bigger than that.
Yeah, so, that's a big deal. it's a lot of trust, and it's a lot of excitement, and it's a lot of responsibility. So, and I love that suggestion, because honestly, the first several forays I made into animal communication were just downloading free tools, signing up for mailing lists, listening to free videos on YouTube. Here we are with the podcast now. And you can head over to animallovelanguages.com/podcast, and you can, there's a wealth of information from so many different amazing, talented communicators who have volunteered their time, just like Suze today, to share their path, share their journey, allow you to get to know them a little bit better. There's also, speaking of free resources, over on the free tools page, which is under Learn With Me, you can find a 5-day animal communication camp and a 4-part online, and they're both free, intuitive pet parent series, where you can just start to kind of tune in a little bit and just see, do I want to pursue this further? I mean, I did lots of this, and I still do. I still sign up for other communicators' free courses, and because there's so much to learn. And, once you get into this, you realize it's a very humbling, very honest, very earthy, I love that word, very earthy journey, because, we're learning how to be more human, be more connected, be more present, to see ourselves fully, to see another being fully, to kind of drop the whole labels, even a species label. It kind of doesn't matter at some core point. And so I love that. Suze, they can sign up for your mailing list and get notified, I assume, when your workshop goes. I know there's a lot of that right now. It's like, okay, I guess COVID isn't just going to go away after it's been a year, it's been a year and has been 2 years. It's like, it's still here. So let's go online, that feels safer. And so that's an awesome opportunity, take a course. It doesn't have to take over your life until you feel that inner nudge, and maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's still absolutely the best way to save this planet, is to learn more about it and every species that we share it with. So Suze, thank you so much. Again, it's animalsinyourheart.com. That's how you can reach Suze. You can reach me at animallovelanguages.com. More importantly, you can reach Pearl, who's awake now from nap and thinking about eating rice. I have loved chatting with you today, and I appreciate all of you who are listening and watching. Please, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you would like to leave us a 5-star review, we gratefully accept. Love to hear from you, and hope you're enjoying this series, and there's lots more to come. So we will see you next week. And Suze, have a wonderful, beautiful day in New Zealand, a place I have yet to visit and really, really, really want to. So maybe one day. It's on my bucket list.
Come play, come visit.
I would love to. All righty, bye for now. We will see you again soon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.